So customer performance landscape sounds very grand. And this is what it looks like. So the diagram on the right, the circular diagram, this guy over here, all right, originally came out of Southwest Airlines in the States. And they were talking about everything should connect with everything else, and I think we'd all accept that. If it doesn't, then why are we doing it? And they came up with this idea of these vectors which point up in this direction, which many of us would put north at the top of a page. You know, we would put it at the top of the page, and they can measure those vectors in terms of the tasks that people are doing, which aggregate to activities, which in turn produce outputs. And those outputs then become outcomes, which hopefully are successful customer outcomes, leading to the customer. All right. So that was the first incarnation of this. That would have been about 15 years ago now, when people started to talk in this way. And what they were looking for was measuring this vector. Is it pointing true north, or is it pointing west or east? You know, which way is it? And having an ability to be able to calibrate based on the numbers in the organization, where are we going? As the thinking around that, as the science developed, people began to realize, as we've discovered in these last few weeks, is that tasks and activities are just an effect that are created by moments of truth. So if we scan the diagram on the left, what we could see there is we've got the most important aspect of that landscape is the customer interaction, the moments of truth. And then above that, you can then see this part of the pyramid is actually the circle. All right. So it's got tasks, activities, outputs, business outcomes, key customer outcomes, and then the successful customer outcome at the top. Right. The reason it's called a customer performance landscape, this originally over on the right here, in case you meet anybody who's done the earlier versions of this program, was called the process performance landscape, because these two levels here are all about process. Right. So it was called process performance landscape. It didn't have the customer on there. The one on the left, right, does have the customer on there because it has the moments of truth. It also has some other things on as well. It's got the internal moments of truth, so our internal interactions, which go to contributing to the moment of truth itself. The business rules that underpin those interactions, our digital capability, the mindsets that we need in the organization, and the rewards through which we support them. So if you wanted to get really graphic about this, some people are very visual. I'm very visual oriented person. A diagram will speak 1,000 words to me. As a picture paints 1,000 words, it's something like that, isn't it? So with this sort of diagram, I can actually see the true north. Right? I can see how each thing contributes to the next and should aggregate up. So in principle, I should be able to connect those dots rather than just on a nice diagram which explains what we're doing and how we're doing it. I should be able to do that. Agreed? So that's what we're going to do, is we'll have a look at an example of it and how it's represented in the real world. So here's one with a slightly different perspective. It just goes down to the moments of truth here. So on the previous diagram, that was the red layer and then goes above. And we refer to this CPL as the first evolution. It doesn't have the layers that sit below it, for instance. It doesn't have those. Right, but it's enough to be able to work on. If you just understand what the moments of truth are in your experiences and processes, then you can begin to build this model. And that's why we refer to it as first evolution. It's like your first cut. It's what you would do. And between you and I, it's that thing again. It's the process performance landscape as was, with the addition of moments of truth. So to build on that process thinking, to sort of say, is all that process performance landscape, it doesn't exist in its own right, because what causes it to be are these moments of truth, the customer interactions. Second evolution is when we're getting and identifying that, and that's what these guys are doing here, is that what they're doing is they're working out based on the number of moments of truth, that's this lot here, is based on those. What are the tasks and activities? What are the underpinning business rules? So what are these are the moments of truth again, what are the internal things that we're doing to deliver them? And then subsequently, what are the business rules that underpin those internal things that allow us to actually achieve it? And then they will carry on building that through post-it notes. That's typically the best way of doing it. So whether you're doing it virtually or physically in the room, using the sort of post-it note idea where you say to everybody, okay, think about, these are the moments of truth. And these, let me just wipe some of that gubbins off. These moments of truth here, for instance, these three, right? They came directly from the Abacus work, and they were transferred from that customer life cycle into the performance landscape. So they are the same things that we've already described. Now they're figuring out how do they connect with the other things that we need to do. So in order to deliver this moment of truth here, number one, what are the tasks we need to be doing to actually achieve that moment of truth? And then from that, can we naturally group tasks into one activity? So can these two tasks equal this one activity? So the tasks might be answer customer call and then deal with customer query. That might be the two tasks that we're doing internally. That equals an activity of, say, customer engagement. And that would be in that box above the two tasks. So aggregates become that. And then we sort of say, okay, what is the output that activity delivers? So don't worry, I've got a diagram which talks to this, of the steps to get to. So don't worry, you don't have to write all this down as usual. It's there's an explanation of it. So it's a very organic process of building these things. As I said, the steps to actually do that are pretty straightforward. You'd start for second evolution. So this is where we are going to see digital capability, mindsets, and rewards. Start with the moments of truth. Then from that, sort of say, okay, if that's a customer interaction, what are our internal interactions? What do we need to be doing inside the organization to deliver that? So that's box number two. So you'd start with one, go to box two. Then identify number three, what are the business rules that underpin it? So the business rules fall into like three categories usually. Strategic ones, that's what the organization's about, and that's why we're in this marketplace. Regulatory ones that we have to do because the people who run our industry, the government or the overseers, tell us that these are the regulations. So for instance, money laundering is a set of business rules which are to do with how we process the money that we receive. So it doesn't matter what type of organization we are, we all have to adhere to certain rules around money laundering today. So you'd establish number three, the rules, and then we can go into, so what are the tasks we need to do, activities, outputs, and so on. And there's little explanations, as we go through it on understand the task, aggregate the tasks, identify the outputs. So what do the activities produce? Oftentimes as well is the output level is where most of our measurements are currently before we've moved our organization outside in. So it might be, how many people did we get coming in through the doors today? How many people bought product? What was the range of the purchase of those products? So what was the distribution? What was the high-end product? What was the low-end product? And so on. Are they recurring customers and so on? Those are all output measures. But we want to ask ourselves the question in terms of getting to box number 7, what's the result of the outputs? So learn number 7, what are the business outcomes as a consequence of those outputs? Sometimes that's where people get stuck because they're so driven by outputs, efficiency, effectiveness, and productivity that they say, well, what's the result of doing that? You go, we're doing things right. Yeah, but what's the result from a business outcome point of view? So an example I referred to earlier on in the program was General Motors, right? In going through Chapter 11 proceedings and being protected from bankruptcy. At the time, their production measures were showing that they were in the upper quartile of the car industry. They'd leaned themselves out. They'd gone the Toyota way. They'd done all that other fantastic stuff. And it was showing them not only in the upper quartile, in some instances, the top 10% of the car industry. And yet, General Motors were facing bankruptcy. So what was the issue there? And as my colleague John said, who was doing the work at the time on the ground, he was a Chapter 11 reversal specialist. What he said was they're measuring the wrong things. They're measuring outputs. They've got really good at making cars that nobody wants to buy anymore. So they've been extremely efficient at assembling cars and getting wheels on, and they're getting them out of the factory faster than they've ever done before. So as we would say, they've got really good at doing dumb stuff. because what they weren't measuring is the business outcome of making cars. And it's not rocket science. What's the business outcome of actually making a car? Yeah, we sell it. It's called sales, right? So the business outcome is we've sold the car. Great. So what's the customer outcome from that? So if we get up to level number 8 and we're thinking that way, well, the customer outcome from that is I've got my brand spanky new car. It's so exciting. I'm going to go out for a drive in the countryside and enjoy it. So we can see there's a customer outcome from that. But if we've stopped measuring at the outputs level and we haven't sort of said, what's the result of this output, we may become disconnected. Now, General Motors in the past might have been connected and the outputs were good enough. But as you and I have customers have become sort of rebellious, promiscuous, with usually high expectations. We're prosumers now, and we want to operate across multi-channels, and our expectations are higher than ever before. All those things taken into consideration mean it's not good enough anymore just to deliver the outputs. We have to go to the outcome level. So is this making sense, Angelica? Yeah?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I apologize for my pronunciation of the name. It doesn't matter whether and it could be an English name or anybody's name.
Oh, it's perfect. Angelica is perfect.
Oh, fantastic. Good. I'm pleased to get it right. Occasionally that, as you'll see when you get involved with some of the other people who are involved with this, Steve's biggest trait, and I'll put it down to being a granddad, is that number one, he'll call one of the guys I've been working with for 12 years and I'll still get his name wrong. Right.
Oh.
So I'll call him John instead of James, and he just looks at me and it's that granddad syndrome, isn't it?
He looks like a John, that's why. He looks like a John, I guess.
He does look like, I tell him that. That's exactly what I say to him. James, you look like a John. I wouldn't call you that if you didn't look like one. So I said, and ironically, his father's called John. So I said, why didn't you call him John as well? Because he looks like a John, like you, mind you, his dad looks more like a James, I suppose. But anyways, you know where I'm coming from, though. I just I've got excuses for it. So, and it's where you're beginning to lose it a little bit when you can't remember all the grandkids' names when they're all running around you and things like that. So that's and Penny, my wife, she'll go through everybody's name. James, John, Julie, Janet, everything that just to get to the right name eventually. So swinging back to this, this mechanism, the customer performance landscape, coupled that with the North Star alignment template, allows you to establish this line of sight. And as I keep saying, you'll be able to connect the dots and then draw the lines. And you should, in principle, be able to identify the tasks that people are doing, say within layer number 4, and identify how does that contribute to these things up to the top. And I'll show you that in another diagram in a minute. But in terms of the tasks, what's my contribution down here and how am I rewarded? And we do create those diagrams when we're doing audits of this type of thing, is to understand them. And there's different ways of people assembling them. What I say in terms of your homework, and guys on the recording as well, is don't go down to box 10, 11 and 12. We don't cover that at the master's level when we're doing the certified outside in masters. If you come back and do the champions subsequently, or do one of our other programs, you'll hear us talking about digital capability, creating the right mindsets, and then how do we underpin those with the right rewards. So I'm just asking you to do for the exercise boxes 1 to 9 for the example that you'll be doing on the outside-in strategic matrix, the SCOC, and the North Star alignment template. And if you've got that, I'll understand, you understand, and we can go forward from there. So let's have a look at an example of that. Here's one on the wall, and you can probably discern it's an organization beginning with A, online shopping utopia, right? And their overall endeavor was, to actually achieve that. Here's our moments of truth level. So this is a pretty extensive experience, as you can see, right? So those are our moments of truth. And we're asking ourselves the question, as you'll be doing, is what are the internal things we need to be doing that will deliver those moments of truth for us, right? And it is legible. You can actually read it offline later and blow it up and have a look at it big on the PDF. And then what are the tasks our people need to be doing to actually deliver those things? And then likewise, do these tasks aggregate up to activities? So like those two go up there, those three go up to that one, and so on. Likewise, what are the outputs of the activities? So what do the activities produce? And sometimes it's a one-to-many, sometimes it could be a one-to-one. And you never have an activity which didn't have at least a connection. That one slipped down, but would have a connection with at least one other. And there's certain rules that go into this. So as you get familiar with sort of building them for the experiences, the sense of it is that you can't have internal interactions that don't have an owning moment of truth. Likewise, every activity must produce at least one output, otherwise why are we doing it? And then in turn, these outputs at this level, where a lot of our management key performance in KPI systems stop, is measuring at the output level. So if I was in IT, an output might be projects coming in on time, to budget, and achieving the deliverables that were promised. What's the outcome of that? Well, they get the system on time. No, that's not the outcome, is it? What's the business outcome of you doing that? And those can be challenging questions, just as they were in terms of General Motors. So you've got really good at making cars nobody wants to buy. Of course, the people in production weren't stupid. If that was just how they were being managed in terms of achieving their reward, was being managed through those metrics. It was where the metric system stopped too soon. So we need to drive it. So for instance, those outputs, the blue guys, some of the business outcomes are services improved, we've reduced costs, we've increased revenue, we've got digitally enhanced CX, so the experience is so much better. We have a strong brand affinity. It's always a big thing with Amazon, brand affinity, the happy smiley face underneath the Amazon logo. We retain profitable customers, and we have proactive customer engagement. So those are all business outcomes that can be measured. And likewise, those lead to these customer outcomes here, the key customer outcomes. So have a look at this, offline when you get a chance. If it's not making sense, then again, come back to me and we can talk about it. Another thing just to draw your attention to when we're looking at that is, because we haven't covered it off specifically, is that you can see a flow taking place here. Let's wipe some of the annotations off so I can draw your attention to it. It's nothing that you have to demonstrate on your CPLs when you come to do the exercise. But what I will say is we talk incessantly about cause and effect. So what's going on here? We have a causal flow, as we refer to it. So people who come and do the process or the customer experience versions of the programs, you'll see all these things connect, right? And I liken it for any of us who've done process mapping and process modeling. We used to do swim lanes, and we'd have different departments and different functions doing different things in swim lanes. Well, if we're not mapping the customer on the swim lanes, all we're doing is actually mapping an effect. And as Ishikawa analysis or fishbone analysis or cause and effect diagrams demonstrate, we should be identifying the cause of work, which of course we keep saying is the moment of truth. So it's the moment of truth that create these blue ones, which are the internal work that we need to do to deliver the moment of truth. So there's a cause and effect relationship happening there. So you can, as you develop the thinking, is start to model through causal flow. How does this actually, work together? But as I said, that's a bridge too far from the certified outside-in masters. We talk about it at the champions level, because we talk about being able to sanity check any of your performance landscapes and make sure the logic, holds water, to make sure it sort of hangs together. I just wanted to show you that, because you might think, what's these arrows on the diagram? What's all that about? That's pretty much what that is. These guys also went a step or two further. They didn't model rules, but what they did do is they modeled the mindsets that we need in our organization. And when we say mindsets, it's not just the people, it's our IT systems. How enabled are they to be able to make decisions at the moment of truth? How connected are these things? And then likewise, to create these mindsets, we need to offer these sort of reward systems. That's the baseline. And as I will say again, that's not part of your exercise. That's for another day. As you get into this and start to develop those ideas, you might want to accordingly sort of think about, okay, well, how would I going forward, in association with the partners that we have across our business, is change the mindset change the attitude and the behavior and the culture of who we are. The way you influence that is through the reward system, not just the monetary reward, not just the euro sign or the dollar sign or anything like that, but the actual way the way we play as a team, the way we work together, the way we enjoy doing the work that we do. So the reward system isn't just a monetary value; it's our infrastructure, and it's how we build out our way of being. So that's an example on the wall, but I thought I might as well show you the stepping.